Have you ever watched someone spend decades building the perfect public image, only to see it unravel in what feels like the blink of an eye? For years, Ellen DeGeneres wasn't just a television host. She was the face of kindness. Every afternoon, millions of viewers tuned in to watch celebrities dance through the aisles, unsuspecting guests receive life-changing surprises, and audiences leave with a reminder to be kind to one another. That message became more than a catchphrase. It became one of the most recognizable personal brands in television history. But then something changed. Stories from former employees began making headlines. Longtime acquaintances started sharing their own experiences. Podcasts, news outlets, and social media all asked the same question. Was the public image viewers had believed for nearly 20 years the complete story? Today, we're looking beyond internet rumors and focusing on what is documented, what was publicly reported, and why Ellen's story became one of the biggest celebrity downfalls of the last decade. Because sometimes the most fascinating stories aren't about a single controversy, they're about how an entire public image can change almost overnight. To understand how everything shifted so dramatically, we first have to go back to where it all began. Long before she became one of the most recognizable faces on daytime television, Ellen DeGeneres was simply another comedian trying to make audiences laugh. Growing up in Louisiana, she worked a variety of jobs before discovering stand-up comedy in the early 1980s. Her observational humor and relaxed stage presence quickly separated her from many comedians of the era. Instead of relying on loud performances or shock value, Ellen built her reputation through storytelling. She talked about everyday situations that audiences could instantly relate to, and her clean, approachable style helped her stand out in an industry filled with edgier acts. Television executives noticed. Appearances on national talk shows introduced her to a wider audience, and before long, she landed her own sitcom. The show steadily gained popularity, but in 1997, Ellen made a decision that would become one of the most significant moments in television history. She publicly came out as gay. At the time, it was a career-defining risk. Many people praised her honesty and courage, while others criticized the decision. Advertisers pulled away, ratings declined, and the sitcom was eventually canceled. For a while, it appeared that Hollywood had turned its back on her. Looking back today, it's easy to forget just how uncertain her future seemed during those years. But instead of disappearing from entertainment altogether, Ellen slowly rebuilt her career. That comeback would become even bigger than her first success. In 2003, The Ellen DeGeneres Show premiered. The format looked familiar on the surface. Celebrity interviews, comedy, games, music, and audience participation. But what made the show different wasn't just the content, it was Ellen's personality. She danced onto the stage every episode. She laughed with audience members. She surprised teachers, nurses, military families, and people facing unimaginable hardships with generous gifts and emotional reunions. The atmosphere felt warm, optimistic, and inviting at a time when daytime television often leaned heavily into conflict and sensationalism. Ellen's show positioned itself as something different. Positivity became the product. The phrase, "be kind," wasn't simply repeated at the end of episodes. It became the foundation of her public identity. Merchandise featured the slogan. Interviews reinforced the message. Fans associated Ellen with generosity and compassion. That image resonated with millions. The show collected dozens of awards. Major celebrities lined up to appear. Viral moments spread across the internet. Segments featuring hidden camera scares, dance challenges, and heartfelt surprises regularly generated millions of views online. By the mid-2010s, Ellen wasn't just hosting a successful talk show, she had become a global brand. Companies wanted to work with her. Award shows invited her to host. Her famous Oscar selfie became one of the most shared images in social media history. For many viewers, Ellen represented optimism in an entertainment industry often criticized for ego and controversy. It seemed like she had achieved something incredibly rare, universal admiration, but as history has shown time and time again, public perception can change much faster than it is built. Behind every successful television production is a large team of producers, writers, assistants, and crew members. Most viewers never meet these people. They don't see production meetings or backstage conversations. They only see what happens once the cameras start rolling. For years, very little attention was paid to what former employees had to say about working on the show. That would change dramatically in 2020. As conversations about workplace culture gained momentum across multiple industries, former employees from The Ellen DeGeneres Show began sharing their experiences publicly. Their accounts described a workplace they believed did not match the positive image presented on television. The contrast immediately captured public attention. How could a show built around kindness face allegations that suggested something very different behind the scenes? It was a question that dominated headlines, social media discussions, and entertainment news. And as more stories surfaced, the pressure surrounding one of television's biggest stars only continued to grow. What happened next would reshape Ellen DeGeneres' career forever. For years, Ellen DeGeneres seemed untouchable. Her show continued winning awards, celebrities kept lining up for interviews, and millions of viewers still associated her with generosity and kindness. On camera, everything looked exactly as it always had, but behind the scenes, a very different conversation was beginning to take shape. In the summer of 2020, former employees of the Ellen DeGeneres Show spoke to the press about what they described as a workplace culture that didn't match the image audiences saw on television. Several employees alleged experiences involving intimidation, favoritism, poor communication, and treatment they considered unfair. Others said they felt uncomfortable raising concerns because they feared professional consequences. The stories spread quickly. What made the allegations especially powerful wasn't simply what was being claimed. It was the contrast between those claims and the message Ellen had built her career around. For nearly 2 decades, viewers had heard the words, "be kind," at the end of countless episodes. Now the public was asking whether that message reflected what happened behind the cameras. Entertainment reporters across the country began covering the controversy. Social media exploded with debate. Former guests, comedians, and industry insiders started sharing stories of their own, while others defended Ellen and argued that one person's behavior shouldn't define an entire production involving hundreds of employees. As public interest intensified, Warner Brothers, the studio producing the show, launched an internal investigation into workplace practices. That decision signaled that the controversy had become too significant to ignore. Investigators interviewed current and former employees to better understand what had been happening behind the scenes. Although many details of those conversations were never made public, the investigation ultimately led to major leadership changes within the show's production team. Several senior producers departed the show. It was one of the clearest signs that changes were being made in response to concerns raised by staff. Then came the moment everyone was waiting for. Ellen addressed the controversy herself. In a message to employees, she acknowledged that problems had existed within the workplace and apologized to those who had been affected. She explained that as the show grew over the years, she had relied heavily on others to manage day-to-day operations and said it was clear that some aspects of that management had fallen short of the standards she expected. Later, during the opening of a new season, Ellen spoke directly to viewers. She acknowledged that articles had portrayed the show as a place where people didn't always feel respected and said changes had been made. At the same time, she emphasized that she remained committed to creating a better workplace moving forward. For some viewers, the apology represented accountability. For others, it came too late. Public opinion had already begun to shift. The controversy quickly became one of the biggest entertainment stories of the year. Headlines questioned whether Ellen's carefully crafted public image could survive. Television critics debated whether audiences would return. Every interview, every appearance, and every statement was now viewed through a completely different lens, and then something interesting started happening. People began revisiting old interviews. Clips that had once been seen as harmless or funny were suddenly being analyzed in a new context. Moments involving celebrity guests, jokes, and interactions resurfaced across YouTube, TikTok, and other social media platforms. Viewers who had never thought twice about those clips started asking whether they had missed warning signs all along. Some believed the internet was reading too much into old footage. Others argued the clips reflected patterns they had overlooked for years. The debate extended far beyond Ellen herself. It sparked broader conversations about celebrity culture, workplace leadership, and the enormous difference that can exist between a public persona and the private experience of employees working behind the scenes. Could someone genuinely inspire millions while failing to create a healthy work environment? Could both things be true at once? Those questions divided audiences. Some fans remained fiercely loyal, pointing to the countless acts of generosity Ellen had demonstrated over the years. They argued that one controversy shouldn't erase decades of charitable work and positive influence. Others believed the allegations fundamentally changed how they viewed her legacy. Regardless of which side people took, one fact became impossible to ignore. The trust that had taken nearly 20 years to build was beginning to crack. Television ratings became another point of discussion. Like many daytime shows, the Ellen DeGeneres show faced increasing competition from streaming platforms and changing viewing habits, but the controversy added another layer of uncertainty. Every episode was now being watched differently. Every interview generated fresh commentary online. Every public appearance became another opportunity for critics and supporters to debate whether Ellen deserved a second chance. While all of this was unfolding, another voice entered the conversation. Someone who had known Ellen long before the controversy dominated headlines. That person was Rosie O'Donnell. Unlike anonymous sources or internet speculation, Rosie spoke from her own personal experiences and decades of knowing Ellen within the entertainment industry. Her comments didn't focus on backstage allegations. Instead, they revealed how one friendship had quietly fallen apart years before the workplace controversy ever became national news. And what Rosie shared gave viewers an entirely different perspective on Ellen's public journey. Rosie O'Donnell wasn't commenting as a stranger watching events unfold from the sidelines. She had known Ellen long before either of them became daytime television icons. In fact, when Ellen publicly came out in the late 1990s, Rosie was among the people who openly supported her. At a time when many in Hollywood were hesitant to do so, the two comedians were often seen as allies, navigating an entertainment industry that wasn't always welcoming. For years, many fans assumed they remained close, but according to Rosie, that wasn't the case. During interviews in recent years, Rosie described a relationship that slowly faded over time. The moment she says hurt the most happened during an interview with Larry King. When Larry asked Ellen what had happened to Rosie after her own talk show ended, Ellen replied that they weren't really friends. For most viewers, it sounded like an ordinary comment. For Rosie, it was deeply personal. She later explained that she was surprised and hurt by the remark because, from her perspective, they had shared genuine moments together. She even recalled Ellen spending time with her family during happier years. Rosie has also publicly said she was never invited to appear on the Ellen DeGeneres show during its long daytime run until very late in the program's life. She never claimed to know what happened behind the scenes at Ellen's show. Instead, she simply shared how she experienced the friendship. That distinction is important. Personal experiences can provide insight, but they don't automatically explain everything happening inside a major television production. Still, Rosie's comments resonated with many viewers because they painted a picture of someone who believed fame had changed a relationship she once valued. As clips from those interviews circulated online, another familiar voice entered the discussion, Joe Rogan. Unlike Rosie, Rogan wasn't speaking as a former close friend. His perspective came from years of observing Hollywood and interviewing hundreds of actors, comedians, executives, and entertainers on one of the world's most popular podcasts. Following the workplace controversy, Rogan discussed Ellen during conversations about celebrity culture. He questioned whether her famously kind public image had always felt completely authentic. According to Rogan, audiences sometimes mistake carefully crafted television personalities for someone's entire character. His broader argument wasn't limited to Ellen, it was about Hollywood itself. Over the years, Rogan has repeatedly argued that the entertainment industry encourages celebrities to build highly polished public identities. Viewers see carefully edited interviews, award shows, talk show appearances, and social media posts. What they don't see are production meetings, stressful negotiations, workplace disagreements, or the countless ordinary moments that happen away from the cameras. In Rogan's view, fame can sometimes create enormous pressure to maintain an image that becomes increasingly difficult to live up to. Whether people agreed with his opinion or not, millions listened. His comments fueled an even larger conversation. How much of any celebrity's public persona is real is real? And how much is branding? These questions weren't unique to Ellen. Over the past several years, audiences have watched numerous public figures face scrutiny after former employees, coworkers, or collaborators shared experiences that conflicted with carefully managed public images. For some people, Ellen became another example of that pattern. For others, she became an example of how quickly public opinion can turn before every detail is fully understood. As debate continued, another announcement surprised many fans. In 2021, Ellen confirmed that the Ellen DeGeneres show would be ending after its 19th season. She explained that she felt the program was no longer creatively challenging and believed it was the right time to move on. Supporters accepted that explanation. Critics wondered whether the workplace controversy had accelerated a decision that might otherwise have come later. Only those directly involved know exactly how much each factor influenced the outcome. What is certain is that one of the most successful daytime talk shows in television history came to an end. When the final episode aired in 2022, it marked the close of nearly 2 decades of interviews, comedy, emotional surprises, and unforgettable viral moments. Regardless of how audiences viewed Ellen by that point, there was no denying her impact on daytime television. But even after the cameras stopped rolling, public interest in her story didn't disappear. It simply shifted. In late 2024, reports emerged that Ellen and her wife, Portia de Rossi, had relocated to the United Kingdom. The move immediately became another trending topic online. Supporters viewed it as a personal lifestyle decision. Others connected it to politics after reports indicated that the couple had been disappointed by the US election outcome. Meanwhile, social media produced countless theories attempting to explain the move. Some of those theories gained millions of views despite offering little or no supporting evidence. This illustrates something important about the internet. Once a public figure becomes controversial, almost every future decision can become the subject of speculation. A move to another country, a new haircut, a public appearance, even a period of silence, everything begins to feel like another clue in a mystery, even when there may be nothing mysterious at all. That's why separating verified reporting from online speculation matters. Facts can be investigated, opinions can be debated. Rumors, however, often spread much faster than either. Perhaps that's the biggest lesson in Ellen's story. For nearly 20 years, millions believed they knew exactly who she was because they watched her on television every afternoon. Then new information challenged those assumptions. Some people completely changed their opinion. Others believed her legacy should be viewed with more balance, recognizing both the positive impact of her career and the documented concerns raised by former employees. Whichever perspective you hold, Ellen DeGeneres' story demonstrates how fragile public trust can be. A reputation built over decades can change in a matter of months. Celebrity brands are powerful, but they're only as strong as the public's willingness to believe them. In today's world, where every interview is clipped, every comment is analyzed, and every headline spreads within minutes, maintaining that trust has become harder than ever. Whether Ellen eventually returns to television or chooses to remain outside the spotlight, her story will likely remain one of the most discussed examples of how fame, public image, workplace culture, and media attention can collide. And perhaps the biggest takeaway isn't about Ellen alone. It's about how easily we mistake a public performance for a complete picture of who someone really is. Because Behind every famous face is a real person, a real workplace, and a much more complicated story than any headline can capture. If this video made you think differently about celebrity culture, let us know your perspective in the comments. Do you think public figures can ever truly separate their personal lives from the brands they've built? Or is that expectation impossible in today's world? Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next documentary.